Hi, I'm Bailey and this is Things Bailey Bakes. Now, a little bit about me. At the same time as I committed to the idea of a baking channel, I, in all my wisdom and with the universe's best sense of irony, have decided to start on a gluten-free diet. Yes, I know there are jerks out there who are stupidly precious over the tiniest bit of flour, which never did anything wrong, ever. The reality for me is I have had a series of health issues crop up, and combined with a family history of celiacs kind of led me to make the worst life choice ever. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I probably have made worse choices. But anyway, and now I'm making myself sad. Obviously, the biggest problem, however, with going gluten-free while starting a baking channel is having to relearn things. And also, I miss donuts. Yeah, basically I'm using this as an excuse to make donuts. Now I have some reasonable expectations here. Having tried gluten-free ones, they can certainly be chewier and denser and a lot less light and fluffy than Krispy Kreme make them. Okay, we can get Krispy Kreme from our petrol stations, which is kind of a weird place, I suppose. But anyway, they're fantastic. And even the fakey tasting custard filling, it's all I want on a donut. That and the soft chocolate glaze. But also for me, the classic of classic donuts, it has to be the cinnamon sugar one. And I'm not just saying that because I have an emergency stash of cinnamon sugar. Well, everyone should have an emergency stash of cinnamon sugar. Anyway, today's recipe is from Michael McKinley's Gluten-Free Baking. I've made a few adjustments along the way and I'll note them as we go. So, did I get the amazing donuts I wanted? Well, I'll show you what I did, and feel free to leave comments below about what I probably did wrong, because even negative engagement counts as engagement for the almighty YouTube algorithm. So, here's what I did. Okay, because this is a yeasted donut, the first thing we need to do is bloom our yeast. I've got 125 ml of tepid water, 10 grams of dried yeast and 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. The recipe called for honey, but I didn't have any. It just needs a sweetness, so the yeast has got something to feed on. We give this a stir and let it rest, and out it comes all bubbly and lovely, and that should be a great leavening agent. Okay, so into my large bowl I've got 300 grams of gluten-free self-raising flour. I use the Edmonds gluten-free baking mix. It's excellent. Please sponsor me, Edmonds. 60 grams of brown rice flour, 1/4 teaspoon of xanthan gum, and 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. I was supposed to put in 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, but it's got quite a lot of leavening in it anyway. This might have been one of the many reasons this recipe didn't turn out. So I've sifted it all together and I'm just scraping through the last bits with the back of a spoon. Now I'm putting in 60 grams of softened butter, which I am going to rub until the mixture resembles fine breadcrumbs, or is just like really clumpy. Both of those are excellent measures. Now I'm putting in the ground almonds, 100 grams of those, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla essence, 1 egg plus 1 egg yolk, a tablespoon of buttermilk, and if you don't have buttermilk, please use sour cream or yogurt. Don't buy an entire container of buttermilk for just a tablespoon for just one recipe, like I did. Do as I say, not as I do. I'm gonna just give this a stir to start it off, and then I'm going to start working it with my hands because that's just easier and I like using my hands to cook things. I'm bringing the dough together. The recipe said to add a little bit of water to help hydrate, but I didn't know what the texture was supposed to be like. This texture felt fine. Again, possibly where things went wrong. So I've shaped it into a ball. I'm going to cover it with some Glad wrap and then leave it in a warm place for around 2 hours until it has doubled in size. When I pulled this out, I wasn't sure whether it had doubled because it was like quite wrinkly on the top, so I gave it a knead and another rise. but you don't see any of this because I forgot to turn the camera on. So I'm just shaping the dough into a nice, even, kind of roundish shape because I want to be able to divide it evenly. I'm going to cut it into 16 pieces. Again, the recipe said for 24, but I felt that would have given me like really tiny donuts, and no one wants a tiny donut. So I cut into quarters and then quarters again. I'm just going to roll them out. You can roll them in a ball between your hands. I've had practice at moulding bread on a bench top, so I like to do it that way too. The next thing I'm going to do is pop them on a silicone mat lined tray. The silicone mat I got from Stevens, like a buy one get one free. Never pay full price when some places got a buy one get one free. Just lining them up on the tray, and this is the part where I decide, hey, how about I make some ring donuts? So to do that, all I'm doing is pressing my finger through the middle of the ball, making kind of a ring shape, and I'm carefully molding it because it was starting to kind of fall apart a bit here, and this is possibly where I realized, hey, maybe I should have added some water. The dough felt quite dry and a bit crumbly. Now after you've done this part, you rest it again for like another 15-45 minutes. While it was resting, I decided to show you how to make my incredibly complex cinnamon sugar, which, as you can see, is sugar and cinnamon. I don't have exact proportions because I just kind of like mix to how I like it, but if you want precise measurements because you're that kind of person, the recipe said 150 grams of caster sugar and 20 grams of cinnamon. These are my donuts that are proofed, and now it's time to fry. So the temperature given again in the recipe was 190 degrees. This is my first test donut, which came out very dark brown. So this is when I decided to turn the temperature down. You want to shake off the excess oil before dropping in the cinnamon sugar. Now, here's an important lesson about shaking it gently. Because these were quite crumbly, it broke. And you would think after doing it once I would have learnt my lesson and been way more careful. Nope, I did not. Now this donut was actually following the recipe. I put a little chocolate button in the middle of it and thought I'd give it a deep fry. And while that's cooking, you can see me cinnamon sugaring the donuts in the background. It's best to do them while they're fresh and hot. It helps the sugar adhere better. Now the issue I had with my round donut was I couldn't get it to flip to cook properly on the bottom side, so I tried to turn it and it just didn't work, so I kind of gave up. It was only a tiny small spot on the top. So this is my chocolate filled donut, and this is my disappointment. I sliced it open expecting a molten chocolate in the middle, but it was still firm. Now, what to do with leftover donuts? These were quite crispy, quite hard, quite dense. You take a glamour shot for Instagram because no one can tell they taste bad in a good photo. So go to Things Bailey Bakes on Insta if that's what you're into. And then you get rid of them by giving them to small children who don't know any better, except for the tiny one who did like a quality test by banging on the saucer. The original recipe did say to serve it with ice cream and chocolate sauce, and I happened to have a leftover sundae from Domino's, so I thought, hey, maybe this combination will work. No, you can see how crumbly they are. I did try, and then I thought, hey, if I chuck them in the microwave, maybe that will help, and it did kind of. The second bite was like a lot better than the first, but that's kind of where I gave up and just decided to straight up eat the ice cream. Outro time! Years ago, there was a butter ad featuring Lenny Henry portraying his famous chef character from Chef, where he berates his assistant for baking a small windowless building, and when his sous chef asks him should he feed the offending pastry to the birds, he dryly replies, "Not if you want them to fly." And that has become my family's in-joke about making anything ever gluten-free. It certainly applies here. I don't want to say the recipe is wrong. Please don't sue me for defamation, Michael McKinley. I know I made errors, but I think, as with a lot of gluten-free baking, lowered expectations are the way to go. No, lower. 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 Much lower. Yeah, there you go. This isn't just going to be a gluten-free baking series, because I know there are people out there who like successful results and flavour. But it's also going to chronicle my learning process, which includes failures like this, just as much as successes, which, fingers crossed, there should definitely be more successes. If you aren't one of the 4 friends I bullied into watching this first episode, please like and subscribe. I have my Instagram link below where I will put progress shots of upcoming episodes and other baking content. There's also my Patreon, but honestly, this is like 1 episode so far. I mean, if you want to spend your money, I'm not your financial advisor, but it's there, and by becoming a patron, you'll get my recipe notes from each show, plus early access to videos. Thanks for joining me this time. I'm going to be uploading episodes weekly, unless this tanks incredibly badly or I get bored. See you next time, when there'll maybe be a slight increase of quality. I definitely can't make that promise. Bye!